DeShaun Foster did quite a number on his first recruiting class that he only had like 4 months to build.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxheimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. And what DeShaun Foster did was big time for UCLA this offseason. At the time of Chip Kelly's departure, the Bruins were in shambles. They had, according to what the New York Times said, 10 signed athletes for the class of 24. That was deep in the portal season. That was after an early signing period, closer to the next signing period. And then UCLA had nothing, right? They had nothing going on because Chip Kelly refused to recruit. So much so that the joke was Chip Kelly recruited more in his first months as offensive coordinator with Southern California schools than he did in all his years at UCLA as a head coach, despite living much closer. DeShaun Foster found a way to, one, get more than double the amount of signees and enrollees than what he had, close to 2/3 more, right? He went above and beyond to get a class that, one, accounted for transfers out, which weren't too many, accounted for lack of depth from the previous roster, which was already going to be addressed regardless if Chip Kelly or DeShaun Foster were the head coach. And then he found guys to plug and play for this year, while all of a sudden building for 2025. He got to work immediately. Now is before the new NCAA rules where you can appoint anybody to recruit. That was with a late signee, and not many people knowing his name after he became a Las Vegas Raiders running backs coach, and then came back to UCLA as a head coach. And I think the most impressive thing of the offseason was the fact that he won an NIL war with Texas over Jay Toia, who nearly transferred over there, became a Longhorn, SEC money, right? Went to their spring game. You remember the story, the saga in early to late spring. So in the matter of months, he has filled out the roster, which had some gaping holes. A lot in the offensive line, a lot in the D-line, filled out the defense, which did have 3 returning starters, a new defensive coordinator, and a lot of talent lost to the NFL. So he replenished with some players who are going to play this year and either out of eligibility or wouldn't play next year, but largely found ways to keep guys at UCLA if they're trying to get stolen. And the guys who weren't going to stay regardless if he was the head coach. I think that's the most impressive thing in the offseason. Obviously, I've already talked about on this podcast what he's done for 25, where he's pushing, I think, borderline top 20, top 15 with what his work may be done after the latest safety commit UCLA got for the Pittsburgh, California kid. You've got so many things going on for UCLA in the class of 25. But the class of 24, it's not going to really scare anybody with the numbers. It's large in part what's going to be for UCLA to develop this year. But Foster's still finding a way. If you look at the 24/7 sports site, you see different sites. You're going to see various different rankings according to their transfer portal rankings, depending on what guys they have or not. But, 27, 30 guys overall with enrollees, commits, and early enrollees, transfers, everything, and even guys we didn't expect coming from Conference USA / the SEC, Big 12, coming to UCLA could possibly be plug-and-plays, like the guy with the former Iowa State offensive lineman or the former South Carolina defensive lineman. Just a laundry list of things with DeShaun Foster, with his back against the wall, the UCLA program with its back against the wall, and what's supposed to be a door to the future, a door to success. And yet UCLA was, on their back heels, running like they've got marbles under their feet on ice. That's what it seemed like. The UCLA program was skidding, had no idea where they could go. They weren't stopping anywhere, just slowly running into oblivion. Seemingly so, right? That's the way the fan base made it seem, with where Chip Kelly was putting it, with the lack of fan enthusiasm in the stadium, with the lack of recruits coming, lack of top-tier classes. and the lack of wins overall and very winnable schedules in 22 and 23, in larger part in 23 with a dominant defense. Now, DeShaun Foster, I think, one, restored the fan enthusiasm. Think about what the spring game brought. Wasn't like 67,000 people, but a lot more and closer to a number that would be close to a Chip Kelly number if he stayed one more year for fan attendance in the 24 season in Big Ten play, and brought in NIL bucks to UCLA's budget, right? I was reading a New York Times article back when Chip Kelly left, the positives and the negatives of the UCLA jobs. And so far, DeShaun Foster, as most coaches should and could, but Foster, I think, has done to the best of his ability, has spun it into an extreme positive. NIL support that wasn't there is going then and beyond. So what UCLA can do at this moment in a deficit with people slowly getting off the fire Chip Kelly banner flying over practice and bowl practice into supporting the program once again, where all that money is going to men's basketball and slowly, I think, into women's basketball as well. It's slowly working its way in that side. The Bruins have made significant changes between energy, discipline, and completely changing the script. You see guys out there, and it's funny that we've seen Chip Kelly out there recruiting now in Southern California, at least a couple months ago. But DeShaun Foster has completely changed things for the better. You're not going to see a number 25 ranking for this recruiting class in the Big Ten, right? In the Big Ten, maybe have 25 teams soon enough in the next few years. The Bruins are not going to have a great ranking. But the passion and the pursuit of excellence for UCLA with DeShaun Foster at the helm, I think was apparent. He found places that they needed players, got them to the best of his ability with what was available, and now it's up to the coaches to develop, led by Eric Bieniemy on the offensive side, and still a former defensive coordinator in Kaka Malloy, trying to put together from the scraps of a great defense from last year into a capable defense at 24. The Bruins should surprise. If some over-unders have UCLA's win total as low as 5.5, I still think UCLA can top that, right? I think they can, a larger part with what the Bruins have done in the portal to replenish the roster for this year's team. I think DeShaun Foster, he didn't get 5 stars, he didn't get 4 stars, but he certainly hit a home run. And not all home runs have to go 500 feet, be Ruthian or Shohei Ohtani worth like a bombs. But sometimes they leave the yard, or you get a base hit, and you work your way to second, you work your way to third, and to score, it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think that's what Foster is building in his first 4 months as head coach. 4 months, and he's got way more recruits than Chip Kelly ever did in a couple months span. That is exciting. From 24s to 25s. Unbelievable. Unbelievable with what DeShaun Foster's had to do with this team. Outstanding. Speaking of outstanding, I think the NBA team who drafts Adem Bona in the second round is going to get a steal. Why didn't he go in the first round? Not exactly sure who will get him, but let's revisit why Adem Bona is going to be spectacular for whoever gets him in this second round. I presume he'll be drafted on Locked on UCLA. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the app actually go down closer to the first pitch. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat. Let me tell you, views from your seat are important when you're trying to get to Fenway, Wrigley, or any of these baseball stadiums if you're sitting behind a pole or some old-school stadium where the seating is funky. So that is important with Gametime that takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. And let's not forget to talk about the all-in pricing. You toggle this feature that shows the total up front, no surprise fees at checkout. You're like, oh, I got a good deal. I'm going to go look at, oh, man, I got to pay so much more. No. You can see that on Gametime, which is why it takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first order. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDCOLLEGE, Locked on College for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, so I think the highest that Adem Bona could have been drafted in a really good year for UCLA would have been similar, maybe slightly lower than Jaime Jaquez Jr. UCLA would have needed to make a run in the Pac-12 tournament. Bona would have had to have an outstanding conference tournament. And then the Bruins would have had to make the NCAA tournament for NBA scouts to have Bona on their radars, which he already is. I was reading an article by Jonathan Givney of ESPN saying he's a sleeper steal at the center spot, despite being undersized. UCLA's website had Adem Bona as a 6'10 center, more like 6'8", 6'8.5", 21 years old, close to it after a couple years of college, after prolific prep, going from Nigeria, playing for Turkey, all around. And now here he is as a former Bruin, who I thought could have used one more year. Mick Cronin would have loved 2 more years. They could have tried their best to get NIL dollars, but William Kyle has his spot now in UCLA, and he will do just fine out of the Summit League from, come to UCLA and taking a Adem Bona spot. But for the former Bruin going to the NBA draft, I think his draft stock might plummet a little bit like it did for Amari Bailey. Bailey is a freshman. Good year, could have done a lot more, stayed one more year, and I think would have done better as an NBA second rounder into a first rounder. Adem Bona, very raw skill set, is a unique player because he is the reigning Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, was the Freshman of the Year, did a lot for UCLA in the last 2 seasons that led them to the Sweet 16, but he also got injured, so he didn't play in the Sweet 16, and was one of the reasons UCLA couldn't beat Gonzaga, nor could they guard Drew Timme without their biggest and baddest and best low post defender in 23 in March Madness. This year, UCLA tried to run their offense through him, played really slow, couldn't shoot, so the Bruins tried to play back to the basketball with a 6'8 big man, where teams are throwing out 7-footers like the team across town, Arizona. Everybody's got a 7-footer. Even UCLA had 7-footers, but they're still playing to their 6'8 big man. Where in the NBA, you got Victor Wembanyama dropping threes, all sorts of things. This is where Adem Bona is going to be much better in the NBA than he could have ever been in college under Mick Cronin, despite what he did. It's how much time he's going to have to learn to get out of the foul usage, the foul rate he has, the lack of shooting, and the lack of aggressiveness and the lack of defensive rebounding, right? Where does UCLA thrive on? Defense. Where does Adem Bona thrive on when he's not fouling? Chase down blocks, energy and enthusiasm to get the occasional rebound. But defense, and energy is his calling card. Think about what the Dallas Mavericks rode to an NBA Finals berth, right? It was Derek Lively, it was Gafford, the back and forth center combo. Now, those were bigger, taller guys. But I think what Adem Bona can do is very similar to that skill set in a smaller body. Now, if he develops a scoring ability that we didn't see at UCLA and he's not shown his skill set ball handling wise, I'm not sure that will develop. Could drop the occasional elbow jumper and develop that into a good 60% rate, despite only taking a couple of those in his career. I would think UCLA, that's not the place he was going to develop this. In the NBA, it's where he's going to be put in a pick and roll situation, not pick and pop, pick and roll. Emphasis on get to the basket. Now, if he went to the Mavericks, you got Luka throwing up lobs for him to dunk. Imagine you see a LeBron James, and then you had Adem Bona right there. Or if Davis needed a spell and he went to the Lakers, and he had LeBron in that last year, right? If that's how things are going to play out for the Lakers, who knows with this crazy year? You got LeBron lobbing it if the Lakers take a Bona instead of Bronny James. You got Bona slamming it down. Who knows? Maybe the Clippers do something funky and they get Adem Bona, keep him locally. But Bona, despite the flaws I mentioned earlier, is a high motor, high energy get that you're just not going to get in most second rounders. He's going to be like that guy, the guys who come out of nowhere. He's not going to have the same added emphasis of Jaime Jaquez Jr., but he's underrated, will provide a lot, and will do so much for the team that drafts him. I'm expecting him to be a high second round pick and a super steal. Just like the Lakers got that kid out of Tennessee, you're going to get a steal out of Adem Bona if you take him in the second round as a steal. Early second rounder. If he doesn't get drafted, I would be stunned. And that would be another failed opportunity for a former Bruin where they could have stayed longer. NIL dollars. I know classes aren't the most fun thing to do. I remember, what was it? I think Cameron Brink, I know this is a far stretch of a comparison, but she joked Then when she was done with Stanford, could have gone back for the COVID years. Like, man, classes stink. That was basically how she summed it up. Every college student, regardless if they love learning, student athlete, as much as that slowly fades away into existence, nobody really likes classes. We had fun on the college life, but when you're done with classes, you're done with classes. Now, you can take classes any time of your life, but an athlete that just wants to hoop, you'll watch those Kiki Rice videos of what it takes for her day. Imagine how much more fun she would have in her day just playing basketball or having a moment to sit and breathe if it wasn't just simply going to class, and having to think about going to class and maintaining those grades, whoever it may be. That's why Bona doesn't stay, or all these guys don't stay when they need that extra seasoning, where focusing all year round on basketball for Bona should help him learn how to defensive rebound. If he doesn't, his NBA career will be short. He is great defensively. We'll know that. He just might be a guy that picks up 4 fouls in 5 minutes, but is elite when he's on the court and could very well be on the court in late game situations because of his elite athleticism and explosiveness to get to the basketball vertically, could win jump balls, can beat people to the ball, simply out-hustle people, regardless of who it is, because he is relentless chasing after the basketball. We all know this as UCLA fans. His chase down blocks were memorable. There's too many to count in just 2 years as a UCLA Bruin. And I wish we had 2 more years of Adem Bona. We don't. His 2-year highlight reel of chase down blocks, fantastic. Rim rocking slams, there's going to be endless amounts of those. Is it going to be like Sean Kemp, but Adem Bona slamming it, rim rocking, maybe getting a Mutombo, a Dikembe Mutombo wave right there, bringing some blasts from the past 90s NBA stars? Maybe he's not going to be that level of hype, but he has that level of enthusiasm, shot blocking ability, and will find a way to get on a roster and earn more minutes than is expected wherever he's at. I would love for him to be in a winning culture like Jaquez went to the Miami Heat, not some weird, awkward culture, which makes it a little tough for him to be a Laker because let's be real, even though they just got JJ Redick, it's always weird. It's always weird, but I would be very happy. He would instantly improve defensively and bring a lot more youthful energy to a very old Lakers squad. And then you've got a lot more teams who should take a chance on him. He's going to earn more PT in his first years than Juzang, than Jules Bernard, than Amari Bailey. He's going to earn more time on the court simply because he is a unicorn of sorts with what he can do. Despite a raw skill set, he is that athletic to get on the court and earn playing time when he still needs to develop a lot of skill sets to play at the NBA level for a long time and make a real living at this to play in the NBA. But he's good and would be a major steal and a winner, absolute winner for teams who get him. Remember, UCLA, when he was on the court, won games. When he was just on the court, won games. You get that kid on your team. If he's on the court, you're going to win a lot more games in the regular season than you would if you weren't, because he plays so much harder than anybody else in the NBA in the regular season. It's unthinkable, the lack of defense that they play. And Bona's going to go be blocking shots left and right. Speaking of blocking shots left and right, UCLA is going to have their battles this year in the non-conference. Who? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. You're telling me UCLA has the opportunity in the 24-25 season, not only just to get that fun Big Ten schedule where you're going to see teams you haven't seen in a while, or homes against the likes of a Michigan State at some point, Indiana on the road. Of course, not home and homes necessarily, but you're going to get some big-time teams coming to Pauley, and you're going to have some fun road games between the Purdue's, Indiana's, Michigan State's, right? Michigan's going through a new phase. Lots of fun games. But you're going to add in the likes of what's reportedly happening between UCLA, playing the likes of Gonzaga, playing the likes of Arizona, top-tier West Coast teams. And now let's add in North Carolina. Because remember, for the time being, they've got this CBS Sports Classic going on. It's rotating. The Bruins, they're going to go all the way east in late December, just before the Christmas holiday, where they're going to play North Carolina against the Tar Heels, which is seemingly the only game that could have happened. Remember, there's 4 teams in rotation. Got Kentucky, Ohio State, UCLA, North Carolina. Now, two of those teams play in the same conference. It could be a matter of time before Kentucky and North Carolina play in the same conference. Now, we're not going to have that debate right now, but that very well could be in the near future for basketball conference. For UCLA, they played Ohio State last year. Now they're Big Ten members. Played Kentucky a couple years ago. Who haven't they played? North Carolina. So when it comes to name value, talent on their teams, UCLA is going to have their wits about them if they're playing a home game or a neutral home game against an Arizona. If they're playing a neutral court game or a neutral home game against Gonzaga, if they can get those games, I know they've been reported, it's ready. But until that schedule's posted, you never really know. Mick Cronin's testing his newcomers. 6 transfers, 2 freshmen. It's like, this is what we're doing. We're playing the likes of these teams in a tournament. He wants to be elite, and to do so, you're going to go dominate teams. You call them a back-to-back national champs with Hurley returning, they just go dominate teams in the tournament. UCLA needs to go and dominate. So when it comes to preparing, they don't got that Maui Invitational, which was billed as one of the toughest, biggest, baddest Maui Invitationals ever, which was played in Honolulu. You've got UCLA coming there, not to Hawaii, but whatever they're playing this year, Madison Square, against the likes of North Carolina, which was announced earlier in the week in late June, right? Where UCLA is going to have some fun non-conference battles. Now, I wonder how many cupcakes, how many mid-majors UCLA is going to play, probably 1 or 2 or 3, or what that's going to be dictated like with the Big Ten network, right? The Big Ten channel. You're going to watch those games. You're going to be able to watch those early season games that were always baked into late night Pac-12 LA channel games that only 2 people in LA got. You're going to be able to watch all these games in the non-conference. And in addition, some premier primetime opponents against Blue Bloods, former Blue Bloods, current new age Blue Bloods, whatever you call some of these school traditional powers. It'll be a fun year for UCLA. And those games, despite a lot of them happening on the East Coast, they're going to have 2 probably on the West Coast, even some more maybe surprise games you might mix in there. This will be a very fun year and a very challenging non-conference schedule. And I think UCLA is going to benefit from going east once to prepare their team for this is how it's going to be when we go play the Rutgers, Maryland road trip, right? Or what it's going to be when you got to go from Nebraska all the way down to, wherever it may be. I don't have the schedule because there's not a real one in front of me right now. But they've got the home and road kind of split up where they're going to do. They're preparing with this full cross-country road trip when they're going to go play the North Carolinas of the world on a neutral court for what it's going to be like if you play in a tournament or if you play those early Thanksgiving, Christmas tournaments for travel life in the Big Ten against very tough competition with fans who are louder and rowdier than UCLA fans are at home when you're playing on a neutral court. That's the fun stuff. That is the testing of what UCLA is made of in this upcoming season. And we're going to talk all about it here on Locked On UCLA. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Signing off. Zach, here we go. Go Bruins.